Hello and welcome to Living Proof, the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. My name is Dan Aspel. In this episode, I'll be speaking to I&I director David Abrahams. David is reaching the end of his tenure as director of the Newton Institute, so we'll be speaking about that. And this being a very sporting time of year, we'll also have time to talk about the European Football Championship and the Tour de France. We hope you enjoy it. David, it's brilliant to be here with you again.
Thanks very much, Dan. It's always a pleasure to chat, and some of the high points of my time here have been spent chatting to you, reflecting on life, the universe and the Institute.
We'll see how much of that we can get in before 1 o'clock. So before we talk about your time here as director, because you're coming to the end of your tenure, and we'll talk about how it's been and what the future holds for you, it's worth pointing out that it's Friday the 9th of July. We're recording this just before lunch, and I'm going to put it out this afternoon, which means that the Tour de France is still active, and the final of Euro 2020 is on Sunday, and it would be impossible for us as two sports-loving Englishmen not to mention this before we get into more serious conversation.
Thanks very much, Dan. Yes, you've nicely timed it, so we're pitched on the knife edge of knowing some important decisions, which personally affect me, but affecting the whole of the psyche of the English population, and hopefully a few of the rest of the Brits who are not too upset to see England in the final. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm old enough to remember 1966. I was 8 years of age, but it was less formative for me than 2 years later, and Manchester United winning the European Championship, European Cup as it was in those days for the first time. So that was very important. But still, I remember very clearly the World Cup and what it did for our society and that feel-good factor. And we're feeling the same thing now. Everyone trepidatious. And of course, timing it nicely for the final itself says we can enjoy the very fact we're in our first final for 55 years, but also that adds to the impending sense of gloom and doom if we lose. And I suppose I'm a bit of a pessimist, and my anxieties are running riot at the moment.
Yeah, I think objectively we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that Italy are probably the superior team. I hate to say it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a fair match, perhaps.
England are a terrific team, and I think on paper they actually look better, and they certainly can survive if it's a hot day, and because they're younger than the Italians on average. But the Italians have a knack of winning, and we have a knack of plucking defeat from the jaws of victory, as they say. So there is a sense of foreboding about it. But I'm still an optimist, and normally I hide away and go and mow the lawn and stuff. But I think I will pluck up the courage to watch it this Sunday. But perhaps more important is the Tour de France. As you know, I'm absolutely passionate about that, and I have been ever since I started following Robert Miller and other people way back when there was the odd British person was a singularity in the Tour. They really were remarkable individuals. We didn't have the structure in our society for bringing on really good, talented cyclists. But now we have the two Yates brothers who are from Bury, where I grew up, so I have a great feeling of support for them. You know, we've got recent past successes with Bradley Wiggins, Chris Froome, Chris Boardman and David Miller, if you go back a few years before that. But what's absolutely above all of that is the opportunity for Mark Cavendish to break Eddie Merckx's unbelievable records of individual stage wins.
Yeah, it was yesterday that he equaled it.
No.
He's nearly equaled it.
He's got 33.
Okay.
And he has the possibility today, at this very time, as we're speaking, they're on the road, of trying to equal that record. And I think once he's equalled it, he will succeed it. Remarkable, because he hasn't won for several years, or even been at the Tour in recent years because of an illness that he's suffered. and everyone thought that that was it. It would never be possible for him to come back. And through a number of fortuitous things and a team willing to pick up on him, he's delivered 3 wins this tour. But it's not going to be easy. Every stage is not easy. People get very blasé that he's just sort of a superhuman. So don't underestimate that. Even if it's 55 years since we've won a tournament, England as a team, what Cavendish is proposing to do is once in 100 years. It's really that exceptional. And I think he is the most remarkable cyclist that we've ever produced.
Do you feel that there's any sense of ownership? Because he is from the Isle of Man, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which is an independent state.
Well, for odd purposes, he's from the northwest of England, where I'm from. His accent, I was talking to someone about his accent. It's a very complicated mixture of accents, which has got some sort of Liverpudlian in and Lancastrian in him, etc. But no, for our purposes, we claim him as part of our own. He's a magnificent cyclist, and there's others from the Isle of Man, Peter Kenyock and everyone, and they were brought up in the British system, so it wasn't that they had their own training programme. So no, they're very much part of our of the British canon of cycling, and amazing what he's achieved. I think he's stellar.
Yeah,
absolutely.
These passions. I think you have more of a passion for club football than international football, perhaps, and cycling clearly a major passion of yours. Do you find? I know we spoke a little bit about this in the past, but do you find that your knowledge of mathematics helps you in your understanding of these sports at all?
Well, we've talked about the curiosity side of it. One can go into it, but I've never really done that because emotionally, it's all about sport. Is all about the excitement, the winning, the losing, the knife edge. It's not about rationalising it, although you do your utmost to rationalise it, and we know that all of the success of the Ineos Grenadiers is down to this incremental change and trying to apply science, and I really admire that, and their success of bringing on Froome, etc., and their powertrain of these people to just annihilate all the other teams is magnificent, and I really enjoy reading about it. And we've discussed the aerodynamics of cycling and ball sports. I really love reading about why are sports exactly the way they are because of the science that's underlying that. However, it's all the passion and the emotion which is somehow separate from that. So it's a combination of those. I think the understanding from a scientist's point of view enhances that pleasure, but ultimately, team sports can fall apart because they're based on a lack of understanding between the players, etc., and an emotional set of 11 people understanding each other and working collaboratively, which can be destroyed by anything, a slight loss of confidence. I think with cycling, it's you against yourself. It's gladiatorial. You've got adversity, and whether you're the very best or the very worst at any tour, or even as an amateur cyclist, you push yourself to your limit, and that's what I enjoy. But I should say that the tour has been mad this year. It's just been unlike any other tour. Everything that the Ineos team have tried to do to command their authority in the race has been blighted by individual acts of bravery and genius, which has just ripped the race apart. But here we are, sort of 8 or 9 days in after one race day, where normally we're getting to the sort of pointy end and it's getting exciting. Everyone's exhausted. They've absolutely gone out of the blocks full tilt, and it's a process of attrition and who can hang on and everything. So anything can happen.
So presumably they haven't hit the mountains yet.
Well, they hit the first set. The Alps,
they did Mont Ventoux.
Yeah. And so they've been in the Alps, and then the next phase is the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
So it goes in phases. So we're in these flat sort of intermediate stages. And yesterday, Cavendish could have won because it was a flat stage. However, because so many sprinters are out of it now for one reason or another, and the sprint teams then aren't going to try and stop the breakaway. It's all down to Cavendish's team to fight and maintain that. So, as you know, with cycling, there's always game theory associated, and the stakes get harder and harder the more you're seen as a guaranteed winner. So even with Pogačar, now he looks like he's slightly cracking, and will other teams exploit that? So we'll see that.
Yeah.
But his cracking is probably still better than any other racer in the contest at the moment.
It's wonderful to hear this insight, because when you choose to watch like live coverage of the Tour, it can seem utterly meditative. You know, if you're watching the first third of a flat stage, it's very peaceful, and it's actually quite relaxed. It's like watching the cricket. It's very easygoing, but this dynamism comes at certain explosive moments of each day, doesn't it?
It can do, but also within this race, what's been unusual is that some stages have been flat out. You know, that it's just, again, there's a psychology in these things where there's certain teams, usually the yellow jersey team, imbue a sense of calm and serenity in the race. But this time, others haven't. They've ripped up the rules and gone straight out. You know, before Mont Ventoux, there was a really, really hard day, which normally would be a very easy day because everyone knows what they've got to come, and that affected so many riders that day that they just could not cope with Mont Ventoux, and they lost a lot of time as a consequence. So you have to pace yourself, but in any given stage, the tactics may be such that you cannot pace yourself, and you have to rip up your own rules, and off you go. And that's really the beauty of it. It really is uncertain, and there's always something unusual coming out of it. And people will see this tour as being a very unusual tour. And we will see at the end and reflect back on what happened. But the winners at the moment may prove to all be the losers later, because they've as they use in the cycling expression, they burnt all their matches too early.
Well, there's probably scope there for a programme in the future of uncertainty in cycling or something similar.
Be terrific. Yeah, I really think cycling deserves a long-term I&I programme, all of it.
Yeah. And to round off our sports chat, which thank you very much for listening, anyone that's listening right now. Come Sunday evening, I don't know about you, David, but I will be, if we win, in floods of tears. If we lose, internally crying, I think. Either way, it's going to be very, very exhausting.
Yeah, I'll feel the same. I will suppress all of that emotional hurt and put it into a little box somewhere. But deep inside, we are hurting from all those years of bigging ourselves up for tournaments only to be made to look fools, and it would be lovely to get rid of that, wouldn't it? So yes, the emotions will come out if we win.
Yeah.
If not, we will internalise it and become even more bitter and twisted.
Keep singing Three Lions forever.
Well, I'll probably go out on my bike on Monday and just go for a very, very long cycle ride and feel the pain in my legs rather than the pain in my heart and head. Yeah.
Very well put. Okay, well, let's move on to the meat of our conversation, which is that you are now in the final few months of your time as director of the Isaac Newton Institute, and it's a 5-year tenure, and you will be leaving at the very end of September, and your successor will start at the beginning of October. And what's your initial reaction to that? How do you feel about your time here?
So it's going to take some time to reflect on it. My wife thinks that I will go through a sense of mourning, having left it and giving up the sort of position that I've had. And I think she's no doubt right. There will be a great sense of sort of loss, because even though it's a job, it's really been a focal point of my whole life. You know, I put everything into it, and I think that's what you need for a job like this, because you have a great role and responsibility for the community in what you do here. And so, as well as the as well as thinking big and the strategy, there's also a lot of work to do, and it's been extremely tiring and taken a lot out of me personally in terms of my private life and my ability to focus on my research and to look after my student and postdoc that I currently have now. So a lot of people have given me a very long rope to allow myself to do this, but it was necessary, and I knew that would be what I did. As I come to the end, there's a sense of relief. It would be great to hand it over, and it would be great to get rid of that sort of constant drain on my time and the requirements to attend 3 hours meetings as I've just done.
Yes, indeed, in which you had to skip out of in order to enjoy this.
Yeah. So they're valuable and they're important, but just when you add them all together, they amount to a very large number of hours each week.
Yeah.
So being given time to focus on some of the things that I want to do afterwards will be really enjoyable. Putting things down that I've tried to get in train will be hard. I think that's the thing. But, hopefully I've got a number of things which will be seen through by others to fruition and that I'm sort of proud of. And others will disappear or will become secondary to other people's most important list of jobs to be done. Yeah.
Is there any kind of analogue you can think of for the role of director here? It sounds like a lot of meetings involved. Is there any other sort of job or figure you can imagine it equating to?
Well, I think in academia it's similar to most jobs of responsibility, like being head of school or head of a head of department, a head of a faculty, or even a pro vice chancellor or a vice chancellorship if you've been grand. Outside, it's a bit like a ministerial job, but it's a fixed term, whereas with it being a ministerial job, you can be out on your ear. Or it's a bit like a chief scientific advisor's role, where there's lots that you have to do that's outside your scope of knowledge, even though this is a maths institute and I purport to be a mathematician. Most areas of mathematics I don't know very much about. So you have to manage those and make decisions and prioritise what should be done with the limited resources that we have.
Yeah, so looking back, what have been the memories that you're fondest of? What are you most proud of in what has happened here in your time?
So you're getting through to what's proud of as opposed to what needed doing most. As I leave now, what my particular two main points of focus are the setting up a National Academy for the Mathematical Sciences and setting up a KE Connected Centres Network.
These are knowledge exchange.
That's right. Yeah. So KE is knowledge exchange. Those two activities are really part of I&I's social responsibility to the community. So it's not the direct day-to-day activities of the institute, but more and more I recognise that as we're an independent institute recognising its role for serving the whole UK community, and it's funded by EPSLC to do this primarily, and its international role, then it has this convening power, and I have a role which is independent from any organisation. Even though we're attached to Cambridge, I don't see my role as answering or helping Cambridge directly. I help every institution and every department in the country equally. So this convening role and the ability to put resource into these projects is something that I can do that no one else can do at present. So trying to get that through now, in the last few months before I leave, is really critical. And we are producing a green paper and then a consultation document on, respectively, the Maths Academy and the Connected Centres Network, and they'll be released at the end of this month, and then there'll be a consultation through the summer, and then in the autumn they'll be created. If those come to fruition, then I'll be very proud of the efforts of so many people in in achieving that, and I just played a little part in my role as director to sort of shove it along its way. Very modest role, but nevertheless I'll be very proud of it. Other things that I'm very proud of are looking back, and this is the bread and butter activity of the Institute, are the programmes. I think the long-term programmes have been sensational, and having been close to them, I recognise the value of the Institute far more than I did before, even though I knew before why I wanted the job, because I knew that they were game-changing. So looking back at the portfolio, I think they're broad, they're interdisciplinary, they're intradisciplinary, they're forging particular areas of mathematics for its own sake, and they've really added new features which we wouldn't have done in the past. So we've been innovative, or not me, but the organisers. We've allowed the organisers to be a bit innovative. And then the other sense of achievement is the Newton Gateway, which I think, again, was an innovation introduced by my predecessor and the predecessor before him, David Wallace and John Tolan, which was really successful when we came in, but we've managed to utilise the strengths of it even more, introduce a huge variety of new activities and scale it up, so it's far more effective than it was, by not being concerned about so much about the finances of it, and letting it really spend its time developing its programme of KE activity.
And going back to the programmes, have you had any opportunity to simply enjoy the mathematics which has been happening here? Have you been able to sit in on talks that really appealed to you and take time away from the desk?
Yes, I did more at first, but naturally things get more complicated, I think, over time. So I did at first, but a year or two before lockdown, there were several which were quite close to my own research area, and indeed I gave some sort of introductory lectures in a summer school.
Was this the Wiener Hopf technique?
That's correct. Yeah. And so I did that, but I didn't manage to really enjoy the time and spend time with the organisers as I would have wished. A couple of papers have come out of that work, and there is some nice work that I'm doing with my PhD, which was initiated during that. So I have got stuff out of the programmes, but I haven't had the level of engagement that I would have done had I been a pure visitor here.
Yeah, indeed. You're kind of the host in some ways. It feels like you shouldn't perhaps be in there enjoying and taking part in everything.
And indeed, some of the staff probably think I'm overindulging myself for doing that too often. But not, having said all that, I have sat in on an enormous number of talks. But it's just that we have, hundreds or even thousands a year. So even if you sit in, 5% of that, that's still a lot of time that I'm not doing my day job and enjoying myself. And the talks have been fantastic and very varied and very, eye-opening in terms of to see what people are up to across the landscape.
Yeah. And I was interested when you began speaking about the role here, about how it's been demanding on your personal life. What are you moving to next, and is that going to be less so?
Well, I hope so. I hope more time. So I've been very fortunate. As you know, I've worked a lot with industry in the past, and
I believe you've worked with Dyson. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So Dyson was a great partnership we had, and I had a big team that I left in Manchester who've continued to work with a number of companies. But I kept my links with them for 3 years, and then after 3 years, I finished with my co-supervision of PhD students and then stepped back. So I'm missing that very close engagement with industry. I've been doing it a lot through the Gateway and through VChems, this lockdown activity, but that's not my own personal research. So I'm keen to re-establish that. So in order to do that, last year I applied for a Royal Society Research Fellowship, Industry Research Fellowship, which is it's something that not a lot of academics know about, but it allows me to work 50% of my time over the next 4 years with an industrial partner, and I was very fortunate to being successful in that. So immediately on the 1st of October, half my time will be spent looking at long-term mathematical problems associated with the sorts of interesting physical problems that this company, which is Thales UK, are interested in. So that's great. I've also earned a bit of sabbatical leave, so even though I'm going to be going over to the Department of Applied Maths and Theoretical Physics here in Cambridge.
Yeah, which in fact is just the other side of the courtyard we can see out of this window.
That's right. And possibly I'll be moving to that adjacent pavilion.
Oh, okay, so we'll be able to...
the one beyond that.
Post messages on the window, razzing you.
That's right. Or if I accidentally turn up here, shuffle in here accidentally on autopilot, you'll be able to redirect me to a couple of pavilions along.
And there's a pre-warning to Ulrika Tillman, who will be taking over from you.
That's right. If she finds me at this desk, she can generally kick me out. So I have sabbatical leave, so it'll be great to see colleagues there, and I've known many of them for many years, but there's a lot of people in DAMT that I don't know, and I will look forward to having the time to sit in seminars, hear what other people are doing, and hopefully establish some new research collaborations. But so that those two mean that I can be very, very research focused. I can get really back into that as my number one obsession. But I'm already being asked to do a few other jobs, like national or international sort of roles, which are in danger of taking up a little bit of my time, and I have to make sure I don't allow that to become too much. The strength
to say no to things. That sounds like a pretty sweet dichotomy of the situation there.
So I think I've done well to sort of work out an exit strategy and a way to not feel that I'm sort of missing out. There's a sort of sense of loss, because suddenly I'll have a clear focus, and I will be re-establishing my links with Manchester through this association with Thales, and then I have to work out, am I going to build up a group here, which hopefully I will do, build up a group in Manchester, and to work with other people. I'm fortunate to have a couple of associations, so very kindly Aberystwyth University gave me an honorary professorship a year ago, and because of lockdown I haven't been able to go there. The idea is go there for a month or two at least every year, give some lectures and talk to the group there, meet their students, and generally have a good time in doing research, and that's what I hope to do.
That sounds really exciting. Can I ask a question? Is it in mathematics, as potentially with some other fields, is it as clear-cut a choice as you can follow a path in industry and that will be more financially rewarding but less intellectually satisfying, or you can follow a path in academia and it be the opposite? Is it that obvious? Is it that clear a division?
I think traditionally that's the case, yes. It's one or the other, and a number of us have tried to go a middle way where we do research and remain in academia and write papers which are peer-reviewed, and we're doing it for the long-term development of the subject, but also find organisations in industry who have interesting problems for us to study. That's really applied mathematics at its heart, but often applied mathematics has the very applied end and then the purer end, and the purer end you would tend to have less direct involvement with industry. The problems may have come from industry, but maybe they've been cleaned up and turned into a maths millennium problem, or some of them are more dirty, and then there's associations. So there are centres that have always worked in industrial mathematics. It's usually becomes called separately. So that has existed, but in terms of an undergraduate, if you want a career choice or after your PhD, usually you decide, do I want to go into industry or the financial sector and have a career there, or you want to stay in academia. This separates. But the talk of knowledge exchange and the impact of mathematics is something that, Oxford has always done a lot, Strathclyde traditionally, many stats departments around the country have always done it. But it was always isolated, and often it was undervalued. But many of us have tried to recognise and reward the knowledge exchange, and the impact agenda has come along, and now funding from UKRI, from the research councils, really wants us to engage in that, in these grand challenges. So the whole nature of funding has morphed, and so I think many departments recognise the value of what people like me have tried to do, and we can now do it more openly. And the very fact that the Royal Society supports industry fellowships is, I think, a very, very noteworthy. But you said specifically for mathematics, I should say that maybe I'm only the second mathematician to ever have one of these Royal Society industry fellowships. It usually goes to sort of chemical engineers or other people in big pharma, etc., where the association between research in industry and research in academia is closer. In maths it's a little bit more distant, and so I can help to try and break those barriers down.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and I find it interesting listening to the choices that you have in front of you, because at every stage of your career, no matter who you are, the nature of those choices changes quite a lot, doesn't it? And at the beginning of your career, you're trying to find an opening, you're trying to find a foothold somewhere, and in the more senior part of your career, you're trying to think what's the most impactful thing you can do with the remainder of your working life that you have available. And it sounds like there's an awful lot to choose from for you.
There is, and I think people need to ask themselves those questions. And I'm not sure many of us are on this sort of academic treadmill, and we're so involved with the detail and the sort of short-term need to prove ourselves that we don't reflect on it. But it's the aims of someone starting out their career and someone like me near the end, well, hopefully not too near the end, are surprisingly similar, but we don't recognise that. I really think that academics should ask themselves the question: why am I doing this? Is this worthwhile? Not worthwhile for their individual career or their career success, but what do I think is important, and how can I enhance my input into our community to make it better? So it's the added value. And as you become more senior, your added value is not so much doing your own individual research papers, which one loves doing on one's own, but working with other people, PhD students, postdocs, to do it collaboratively, and then doing it through being a head of department, where your judicious choice of appointments can make an enormous difference to that research entity that you create. And so, I've always recognised that sometimes your own individual research is secondary to others, because the added value you can bring to other people is greater than you can bring the time you spend on your own. So you have to be a little bit, selfless isn't the word, but recognise that one thing has a higher value. And we do get people who become heads of departments and take on these roles of responsibility because they recognise that. But other people sometimes don't see that, and they pursue their own research and think that's far more important. So to me, if you accept a professorship, you accept all of the stuff that goes along with that. If you don't want that, stay as a senior lecturer or a reader. A professor should be expected to do the more of that leadership stuff. But I should say, sorry to keep going on, but I should say early career researchers have a very, very hard time now. I really admire them, and the ones that come through are stunning in their ability to reach the expectations across all of the areas of an academic life. So fantastic teachers, not only doing a great job lecturing to the students and enthusing them, but putting innovation into it, doing public engagement work, doing fantastic research and getting huge grants to recognise the value of that. Then, possibly knowledge exchange and doing that. But also, sitting on committees and doing national and international work. All of these are expected of someone aged 30 or 35. I mean, it's ridiculously competitive and very hard on these individuals. And I really admire them that they stick it out for what isn't a terrific salary for their enormous ability. So, I think that it's a hard life. And one, as we've said, that causes sacrifice in your home life if you are prepared to work the hours which will give you the recognition. And often just being second best means you feel a failure. You don't feel that you're achieving the goals that you want to compared to your peers. So it's tough.
Yeah. Well, that's heartening, I'm sure, for anyone who's in that situation to hear that someone in your position recognises how difficult it is at the moment. So, as I mentioned earlier, Ulrika Tillman from Oxford is going to be taking over on the 1st of October. How would you summarise the institute that you are handing over to her? What would you hope for the future, or how would you describe this, this body of this place, this atmosphere that you're giving to her stewardship?
It's an excellent question and complicated question
because
of lockdown and coronavirus. So I'm very proud that we got a substantial increase in our funding for the institute.
I was going to raise that earlier because that led into a lot of the innovations that are happening this month.
That's right. But even our traditional grant, which was renewed in 2018, had a significant increase, around 30% increase on the previous grant, which enabled us to really start meeting a little better the demand for our activities. It allowed us to grow and to really think strategically about where we wanted to go. And I recognise that this quest for doing more interdisciplinary work should not come at the expense of maintaining our strengths in the health of our discipline, really pure stuff, blue skies research, maintaining that. And so we've been allowed to do that. So I'm very positive, and this additional money we had at the beginning of this year essentially came through. So substantial, it's a doubling of our research income, allows us to essentially increase, almost double our activities, but in a number of creative ways. So I'm really excited for Ulrika to be able to take that on. I think she's, magnificent. Her research record is really enviable, and her reputation allows her to make significant inroads in some of those projects and allow them to be achieved. So that's terrific. The one anxiety I have is because of lockdown, we've really had to think of creative ways of running the institute. Many of our programs have been rescheduled, which will take place next year and the year after. And we've done lots of innovation, which I'm very proud of, but how we manage that transition back to business as usual, the additional activity and the opportunities that are still coming away and take advantage of those is extremely complex. And I feel sorry that it's going to be a difficult way of picking all of those apart, but the opportunities and the finances are terrific for that success.
Let me ask you a sort of rounding off question, if I may, for something perhaps a little more emotive. In 5 years, 10 years' time, when you look back at your tenure here, what do you think will be the overriding feeling or memory?
For me, I think I'll remember all the high points, which are the good times with individuals. I've really enjoyed the social aspects of meeting, incredibly intelligent, passionate, exciting people, both the staff as well as the academic researchers and mathematicians and others, and then talking to them enthusiastically about how we can build their subject up and make progress. That's the fun parts of those. I forget the pain. I'm very good at forgetting the pain and suffering and the difficulties. So all of the long hours will be forgotten. We've been very fortunate. We've not had many grant proposals which have fallen by the wayside. So I think that just the memories of the being on a journey with other people and making the institute a little bit better and more active and more. Well, mathematics has grown. Mathematics is a brilliant subject which is expanding all the time. It's encroaching in other disciplines, and being able to recognise that and sort of start capturing all of that in its own orbit, I think is good. We haven't sat back and just said, well, these are the core areas of maths, we're just going to fund those same business as usual. We haven't. But as I alluded to in my previous answer, that makes the institute more complex, and poor Ulrika has to take on board the complexity, and no doubt she will reorganise it and make it more efficient and effective. But we've been hampered by lockdown to achieve those ends, and I'm frustrated that some things take longer than others. But as to individual events, I'll have to come back and and then I can be able to recount them. There have been some really great highlights, and one was a seminar, online seminar, being curtailed by someone with a snake getting in their house, and that's it doesn't happen in every seminar, but virtually that can happen.
I believe they kept going pretty smoothly.
They did, but eventually the daughter was worried that it was man-eating snake, so they had to cut it. It was near the end, so it wasn't too bad. But that's one of the little memories. But
and it all ended happily, so it's
it did. No one was injured in the making of that seminar. But there's been just the number of wonderful people and wonderful seminars, and wonderful nights out, and enjoying this magical place. I should say another thing is the public engagement we've done, and the work with Barry from the Churchill College, who's our curator of arts and sciences, Barry Phipps, in helping us really make the place beautiful, to think about creativity and to have a dialogue which is much broader than the institute, and that's set to increase. And I know you've been talking to him with some of the podcasts, and I'm hoping that will become a regular occurrence.
Yeah, we're aiming to interview more of the artists whose work has featured and will feature here.
Yeah, and I think that, again, one of the outputs of that will be a sequence of exhibits which will go around the world, and maybe events, workshops, again, international, with the Newton Institute able to be at the centre of that activity.
Yeah. I mean, really exciting plans, and we are very far from the only institute that has had plans like this delayed or postponed in some way by the last year and a half. But fingers crossed that all starts to ease, and that world returns to normal in the next in the coming years. I guess.
We hope so, but we've been open since April, so we're trying our best to get back to business as usual, but usual with the caveat that the new normal is a hybrid engagement mechanism, where we're just as comfortable having lectures from someone at 3 a.m. from California as we are with having someone from Tokyo, at the other end of the clock, and our own visitors and speakers.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add one final thought, it's that I think there's a lot of positives that will come out of this. I think the improvements we've made in terms of virtual participation, that need never go. Even if we do continue to have, which we will, I'm sure, continue to have 150 people in the seminar room again, there will still be attendance, much more attendance than there was from people virtually, and this will become an even more global centre. Which
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's been so many spin-offs to it. We're changing our committees so that our committees can be much more international, which we've tended to shy away from because of the difficulty in getting people over from California for a 3-hour meeting twice a year. So we've not done it, but now all of our meetings will be, hybrid. And so the way we select our programs and etc. and the scrutiny will be much more international and probably better as a consequence of that.
Yeah.
So I think there are definite benefits, and our problem is to make sure that the people who join virtually don't feel like second-class citizens, are able to engage in a meaningful way. When we can 3D print a glass of wine in our social receptions, then that will make it even better. Cheesy Wotsits and a glass of wine produced at the other end, then I think we'll be complete.
That's a dangerous prospect.
Hologram of the each of us, but who knows? That has to be the next facility as part of Zoom or Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, we're coming to the end of our recording time, so I just want to say thank you, and it has always been exciting talking to you, but this won't be the end, because I have a very flippant idea, which is on the table in front of us. It won't surprise many listeners to know that we have a selection of tabletop games, card games and board games here for downtime amongst mathematicians here. So we have some fairly highbrow stuff, but the one on the table is not highbrow or lowbrow, it's somewhere in between. It's titled Newton. It's a board game about operating in the scientific Renaissance and the time of Newton. I believe it's quite good. We mainly got it because of the title. It's by a company called Cranio Creations from Milan in Italy. And I think we're going to try and give it a game before you go, and then maybe we can talk about it on a brief podcast afterwards, get your reaction to Newton, the board game. That's certainly great to try. I'd be delighted to do that. Not that I'm very good at board games, but you'll have to help me on my way. But yeah, let's go for that. Okay.
I'll be delighted to come back to do that, and then we can talk about the success or failure of the two crucial events going on that we started. We can reflect on those. Thank you very much, Dan. I've really appreciated our time, and it's always been good to talk to you, and it's a pleasure to have you on board the staff here. I should say that I've really loved the podcasts, and you just do them without me now, and I listen in every few months and catch up with the podcasts, and keep going with that after I've left. And also I'm delighted that we've grown our communications strategy with the inclusion of Plus magazine on board. Yeah. So I see that as really an important part, getting not only brilliant maths done in the Institute, but really trying to ensure that it's understood by as broad a community as possible. So anyone who's interested in knowing more or talking to Dan, then if you like to, I'm sure Dan will be keen on learning from how we can do things better. Absolutely, you can always get in touch with us at communications@newton.ac.uk. I'll let you go now, David, because time is pressing. But it's been fantastic, and thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.